and welcome everybody. And as Jeffrey just noted, Happy New Year to everyone. I hope everyone had a safe and healthy holiday period. But unfortunately for all of us, it's back to reality and we got to start into a new year. Um, Today's webinar, we are covering the issue of dissertation defense stories, defending in a virtual environment. We thought that it would be a good topic to cover given the environment we're in right now, where a lot of you are, excuse me, are having to defend your dissertations or proposals in that environment. And there are some things that are different about that other than you would, or different than if you were doing it in person. So we wanted to invite some of our scholars who've gone through this experience, who have some words of wisdom, some observations about that experience. And doing some of our preliminary discussions, there were some interesting things that were brought to the table that I really hadn't even thought about, that are different about when you have to defend in a virtual space. The feelings, the preparation, we'll get into some of these things that were going on. But we are very, very pleased to have two of our program graduates be on our panel to talk about this morning. First up, the first person I will introduce is Dr. Whitney McCoy. She is, again, as I mentioned earlier, a program graduate, and we're thrilled to have her on board. Whitney is a postdoctoral research associate in STEM education, and just within the last month took a new position at Duke University as a research scientist. And is that still considered, Whitney, a postdoc there?
No, I'm actually like a full-time person, not a postdoc.
Full-time research scientist at Duke University in their Center for Child and Family Policy. And I got all this right?
Yes.
Okay. So she is very new on that job, and I'll let her describe for you and tell you a little bit more in a minute about exactly what that is and what she's doing. Our other panelist is Dr. Janine Perry Campbell. She is the Director of Diversity and Equity Inclusion for Portsmouth Public Schools. She earned her baccalaureate degree in biology from Old Dominion, got her master's in special education, Virginia State, and completed her PhD in urban education leadership at Old Dominion University. Oh, and let me go back and be fair to Whitney and just tell you also that she got her degree and she got her master's degree from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, a baccalaureate degree at Winston-Salem State University, and PhD from North Carolina State University. I've got all that in and everybody's qualifications. Well, the good news is everybody's infinitely and qualified to be here because they've all defended their dissertations, gotten their degrees, and are out there working in the academy. So the thing we're going to do is talk about, first and foremost, let me just ask you all, what, in terms of preparation for the virtual event, I'll just bounce back and forth. What are a couple of the key things that you all think what is the most important thing? I'll just start there. What's the most important thing that you think preparation needs to be prepared for in defending in a virtual environment? Janine, I'll start with you, and then I'll bounce that over to Whitney.
So I think the key thing, of course, would definitely be preparation, but the preparation looks a bit different in the virtual world. So more attention to your presentation because you're going to be behind a screen, so you won't be as animated maybe as you would have been face to face. and making sure you truly understand the technology, how to navigate Zoom, because you will be your own Zoom administrator for your defense oftentimes. So being very knowledgeable of how to operate Zoom, share your screen, and all those little intricate details of presenting virtually, the logistics behind it, I think is a major part of the preparation in this platform.
Okay, Dr. McCoy, what would you put it near the top of your list in terms of preparations for defending in a virtual environment?
I would just say make sure you talk to your committee members because some committee members may or may not be as familiar with Zoom and might have different rules in terms of what they need and prefer on the Zoom setting. A lot of universities I know now have developed virtual defense rules for the defenses. But I know back when I defended in 2020, those rules, they were just still trying to figure it out. So I would definitely figure out what your committee needs are, as well as what the university is looking for in terms of trying to make sure that you defend properly. Because I've seen a lot of different things happen where people are going in and out of Zoom rooms, in and out of chats, and there are certain ways and procedures that you have to follow to make sure that you defend properly.
Good. You know that, and even when we were doing our preliminary discussion about some of this, you know, we all talked about the level of, you know, the detail of some of the things we don't think about, because prior to the last couple of years, I think I'm safe saying most defenses were not carried on virtually. You know, there were no rules. Dr. McCoy, you just brought this up. There were no rules that were established. You know, everybody was kind of, I guess, doing their own thing as they went through that. But certainly in the last 2 years, I mean, if not all of them, the majority of these defenses are taking place in a virtual environment. And the point you just made about knowing some of the, you know, if your institution, if your department has rules to govern what you do, how you do it, what the protocol are going to be in those defenses, you know, it's incumbent upon the student to make sure they know what those rules are. Did both of you have did either or both of you have those rules? And I think Dr. McCoy, you just said you all didn't have them when you were coming. Dr. Perry, did you all have?
No, not at all. In fact, as Whitney mentioned, my chair was not the most proficient with Zoom herself. And so that's why I said sometimes you may be the administrator of your Zoom because I threw her an assist to be my co-host, but she didn't even know what to do. And so I think in hindsight, prior to defense, maybe even a dress rehearsal with your chair to make sure, you know, if you decide to do a waiting room. I look back, I did not have a waiting room. And so people were just popping in, rather than maybe putting them in a waiting room and at certain periods of the defense, allowing them to come in, you know, nor have someone to navigate that. Looking back, it was just, you just did it. You did what you did. You know, we were just faking it until we made it with the virtual, you know. But now, like Whitney said, I'm sure universities have protocols because this now is the norm. And it wasn't the norm, I think, for Whitney and I can't speak for NC State, and I'm on a limb speaking for Old Dominion, but I think at the time COVID was so bad, and you know, universities want you to graduate, and the defense is part of graduation, and you guys will learn as you conclude your programs, your timelines will be very, very thin. You have to complete things on certain dates to move forward to the next, And I think ODU was just like, you guys, you know what? We've got to go on Zoom and we've got to get it done by this date. So there were no rules, just get it done. But I think now, you know, we know that we have to have better practices and procedures to make sure it's just equitable for everybody when you go through the defense. And it's a memorable time you'll never forget. It builds who you are as a scholar. And so I think universities also want to make it as organized and professional as it can be for you, because this is an experience that you can speak about during interviews. You'll use it for your professional practice. And whether you go into, the work arena or you continue to stay in academia, that experience will help you in articulating it to others. So I think universities have streamlined the process a lot more than in 2020 when it was so new.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Erica, I see your question in the chat, so I was going to answer that one. But Dr. A, you mentioned about practicing and preparation. One thing that I remember talking about in the early conversation was I never practiced sitting down. And so when I got to my defense, I was ready to stand up. I defended at my mom's home, my mom and dad's home where I grew up. But I still had connected my computer to the TV so that I could still see the slides on there. And so I got up ready to defend, super excited. And my chair was like, "Oh, Whitney, you're standing up, girl, sit down." And I said, she's a SRAB alumna as well, Dr. Jessica Gumby. And so she said to me, "Girl, sit down." I said, "What do you mean sit down? I've been practicing this for a month." She was like, "Oh, girl, we can't hear you. The speaker's too far away." And my body started shaking. I was very nervous. So definitely practice sitting down or talk to them about that before so that if you can sit down, because I felt more comfortable standing up. But I figured it out. But Erica, you mentioned the Zoom room. So Janine, Dr. Perry Campbell mentioned the waiting room. So people waiting in a waiting room before you actually start the defense instead of letting them in so that you can, calm your nerves and talk to your committee if you need to. And so my committee chair, Dr. DG, my mentor, she had that capability. But when I actually finished the defense, my committee needed to go into a breakout room and discuss my performance. And so they had a breakout room that they needed to go into. And they wanted me to stay in the room. And then afterwards they brought me into the breakout room and then sent me back. So all that going back and forth, there's some people that don't know how to do that because we're not in person. So that's definitely what I'm talking about in terms of the Zoom rooms. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. The last thing, I'll share that later. So go ahead.
And I think what Whitney, her chair was proficient because my chair did not know how to work anything in Zoom. So she literally ended the Zoom call and texted me and said, "Log back in, we're ready to proceed." So when they were having their discussion, she put myself out and some guests who had logged in. She kicked us all out of Zoom, and then they had their discussion, and then she sent the text, come back in. But so what was kind of sad, my mom passed away on my journey. So my sorority sisters and my immediate family, were my support. And so, of course, I couldn't text everybody, "Okay, everybody come back in." So when they announced, "Congratulations, Dr. Perry Campbell," it was a moment I couldn't share with my family because she didn't know how to put us in a breakout room. So, so yeah. So hopefully now, whoever she's advising, she's learned how to put people in breakout rooms and things like that.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you, know enough of the protocol of the people who are there and how that's going to work, and whether you as you need to be your own technician, if you will, and if you're conducting that or somebody else is going to do that. But I hear you all saying, make sure that you all have those kinds of discussions with the committee members, the protocols there, so that this goes as smoothly. And I think, we had all talked about in our prep for this, one of the things I didn't want anybody I think I remember telling you all during my defense, I didn't want anybody there because if I could crash and burn, I was going to crash and burn alone. I was not going to have anybody witness that. And I raised that because in this Zoom kind of world, it's easier to have multiple people, lots of people in your defense, because these are public displays and people can be in there. The thing that I never thought about that you all, I think both of you raised during our prep for this was, and I want you to comment on making sure, because you're now dealing with, you have family and moms, dads, cousins, and aunts, uncles all tuning into this, making sure, comment about the protocol and etiquette. I guess not so much protocol, but etiquette when they're in that kind of environment, what the behaviors need to be on your audience's part. Because that can, you can see very quickly how that could wreck some things too, if the behaviors of your audience are not in line with the protocols of academia. Could both of you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so I think that was one of the ones that I shared. So as I mentioned earlier, I probably had about 20 friends that logged into the defense, to be supportive. And, I'm an equity person, so I teach about code switching every day. So my sorority sisters and family have never seen the academic side of Janine. They just know Jay, right? And so I think I should have had a conversation with family and friends about, you're going to be with professors from all over the country, just please come in, mute your mic immediately. Well, my North Carolina Central baby eagle, my daughter, who is 21, came in 15 minutes late, loud. She was like, oh my God, my mama's already. I was like, oh my God. And, I'm in the middle of presenting, so I couldn't mute her. And then one of my sorority sisters said, Zoe, mute your mic. I was just like, this right here is just turning into a circus. And then as you defend, towards the end, your committee will ask you questions. And so one of my, I'll never forget, a committee member asked me a question. And of course, you are the expert, and I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I was going to tell her, lady, look, I wrote this paper. I know what I'm talking about. And no, I wanted to write my paper, through this perspective. And so I told her in a nice way, knowing that my fate was in her hands. But the way that I did it, my sorority sisters just started ooping. They were like, tell her, girl, that's right, get it, Jay. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like texting, but like, y'all, please put it in the text group. Please share it in the text. So, so please make sure you educate your participants. I think, if it would have been face-to-face, the atmosphere dictates the behavior, if that makes sense. But when you're sitting in your living room and your TV's on mute and, you got your soda beside you, you just think, hey, we're just on Zoom and it's just casual, but it really is professional and it really is serious. And Kalia, I was absolutely I think I was more embarrassed. But hey, it is what it is. Everybody just shows their love in a different way. And honestly, I'm the first one in my circle to have earned a PhD. So no one on my support team had ever been to a defense before. So, you don't know what you don't know. So, but yeah, that was my horror story from my family and my daughter.
My family and friends definitely joined in. I defended on March 25th, 2020. So that tells you how close to COVID and not having any rules this all happens. On the 15th, I got back from Rwanda because I was in Rwanda the 6th to the 15th, and came back and was like, oh, you're going to be in quarantine somewhere locked up, and all these things were going on. So I didn't know, what they were going to do. I came back into the country just fine, and within those 10 days, I went back and forth between like in person, just a couple people, now less than 5 people. Okay, we're going to do this virtually. And so I sent out an email for NC State. Typically, they send out an email letting people know this is the person's Zoom link. This is where they're defending, or they're defending this day. Dr. A said he didn't want anybody there. I was so excited to have my people there. Like if we gonna mess up, we gonna mess up together. So I was so excited to have them there. So I sent out a Zoom link and it had about 50 people join.
Oh,
Well, yeah, between friends, family, and everything else, I had 50 people that joined. And so I have friends and family that had their iPhones out and all these other things, people walking around, you know, combing their hair in the background and everything. And so but my chair was a Black woman. So she, she, muted people's camera, turned people's cameras off, or she set it up to where as soon as people came into the room, they were muted. So you can do that. You can do it where as soon as they come into the room, they are muted. As soon as they come into the room, turn their camera off. And she made sure to preface, like, this is this kind of environment. This is how we can proceed, conduct ourselves in this space. This is what we're going to do. But everybody doesn't do that. So I want to share what one SREB scholar did. His name is Bruce Mitchell. He graduated from West Virginia. And he graduated last year, I think. He defended last year. He sent out a complete email, y'all, to all of his constituents. And it was like a brochure. And it had like step-by-step guidelines. Follow this link to learn about what a dissertation is. These are the rules of a dissertation defense. This is what's going to happen. We're going to come in. I'm going to tell you, my work. Tell you about my work. My committee is going to go into a breakout room. They're going to discuss if I passed or not. They're going to bring me back into the room, let me know if I passed or not. Then we're going to come back and we're going to share. You can ask questions at this time. Please do not ask me anything crazy. So he sent all this out. He also said, if you join after this time, you are not allowed to act. Hold on real quick, y'all. I have someone in the back room making some noise. So basically, he came in there and said, like, do not say anything after this time. And if you don't come within the first 5 minutes, you're not allowed in the Zoom room. He definitely made it quite plain. So basically, it went really well because he gave everybody the rules in the beginning. And he said there were some people that were upset with him. I talked to him afterwards, but he said, life. He said, some people, he said maybe like one or two people were like, I couldn't get in. I didn't know how to do this. And I mean, he said, but that's just how it is, and that's life.
That is interesting. I thank you all for sharing those stories because they're really important in this. And I think we need to. And you're reminding me that you had mentioned that to me before that Bruce had sent out. All of you should give consideration to when you're in the defense and if you're having to do a virtual defense. I love the idea of sending out and making sure folk know how, because you do not want one of your friends to undo all this hard work you've been doing and act foolish in a very formal setting and during a very formal event to mess it up for you. Because that's not only embarrassing on so many different levels,
right.
But you never know about committees, and committees have to sign off on these things. And whether somebody is offended by your quote unquote support system, who think they think they're okay, but they could be hurting you in this process. And not to mention you're nervous enough as is, and then your folk act crazy, that you're gonna start sweating on camera when those kind of things start to happen to you. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I think that's a really important something for all of the scholars who tuned in to really think about as you get into these defenses, and when you're doing that in a virtual environment where you've invited guests, make sure that you have communicated protocol to them and what's going to make you comfortable in that environment, because ultimately it's your defense. Right. And I like Bruce's point. Look, if I offend my friends, that's one thing, but I'm trying to get this degree and I've got to make sure this goes the way I want it to go and not have anybody else dictate that for you. What are the kind of, did one of you mentioned, I think when we were prepping for this, about how we, because in some of the communications, as we're doing right now on Zoom, there can be a lag time. We were talking about that issue of that little bit of a lag time, and making sure that you're familiar enough with your technology. So if there is a slight lag, making sure that as you're presenting things, to slow down just a little bit. You're not there in person with where it's instantaneous. There, we're talking things over the internet. Can you all comment a little bit about that lag time and slowing down during your presentation?
Yes, one thing I did to practice. So when I was defending, I was a principal at an elementary school. And we were virtual, so my students weren't there. So I literally used one of my classrooms, and we have big BenQ boards, which are like smart boards. So what I did was I logged into Zoom through the smart board to use that as like the account. And then with my laptop, I went in to Zoom. So I was logged in twice. So with the smart board, I turned the camera off, muted it. And then, no, I think I unmuted it, but muted my laptop. So of course you got to play with all of this stuff, right? And so my committee chair would come on, and I would get my secretary, just log in from the main office because you're on a different device. And we literally I would say something, and just to hear, comment if you heard it. And you can hear the lag of the yeses. So I heard it maybe a couple of seconds later, and I speak fast, and I knew I had to slow down for the defense anyway. And so I just encourage you to just pause and give wait time. So before you transition a slide, you may count to 3 to yourself. If you ask a question, you literally may need to count to 3. When someone asks a question, count to 3, because as you're answering, someone else may be just hearing the question. So, as people communicate, give them some wait time. When you answer a question, literally give a few seconds of wait time so it can be processed and heard, because depending on the device, the location, the connection, the network bandwidth, all of those things come into play with lag time. And that's something really important, because you don't want to talk over people or your message gets missed because of the issues with technology.
Thank you. Whitney, excuse me, Dr. McCoy, any thoughts about that?
No, I didn't experience any lag time issues, but I would definitely check those internet connections before time, because different places do different things on different days. So.
And you just mentioned something as you're talking about that and those connections. Would both of you just address? Did both of you have a backup plan? In case we are talking technology, and invariably technology is going to fail. And of course, as chance would have it, it will fail during your defense. It's just the way things happen. But did either one of you have a backup plan just in case things didn't go the way you wanted them to go virtually?
Well, I'm bad. No.
I would say, fortunately, my computer and everything worked well that day. But I did have an iPad. I had my mom's iPad just in case. I had my cell phone just in case, and all of it was sitting within an arm's reach of me, just in case something went down. I had told everybody in the house, because there was a couple people here, about 8 or 9 people here. Everybody turn their Wi-Fi off. Turn your Wi-Fi off. You don't need to connect to Wi-Fi right now while I'm in here. And so that just help me make sure, like, I have all the Wi-Fi strength. Nobody's upstairs watching Netflix. I think there were some kids here. My niece and nephews were here. So I had them upstairs. They were sharing like one TV. Like, we don't have time for problems today. So those were definitely things that I made sure to have. And we had a plan. Again, me and my committee members had a plan about what to do just in case. And so I had told people, like, on the side, like, if something goes wrong and you're unable to connect, or there's too many people on the call and it's too much, turn your cameras off. So for a second, I think my chair did tell people to turn their cameras off, she said, can everybody turn their cameras off? There's a little bit of a lag, I think, and that helps. A lot of times if you turn your cameras off, it works just fine. But I would definitely have some type of technology backup.
Yeah.
That's good. I just had prayer because, but the turn the camera off, I was about to say that because, if you have over about 15 to 20 people and you're doing audio, the visual video, it does slow everything down, your slide sharing. So my committee kept their cameras off, but all guests had to turn their cameras off when they came in.
These are excellent points to be making to our audience about things to think about that you might not have thought about. Anything else you all want to add? Because then that we've not touched on, that we talked about before, that I've missed in terms of covering areas that we wanted to make sure communicated to our audience today.
I would
then I'm gonna. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just remember you're the expert. I was really overwhelmed. I kind of talked a little bit about it, but I turned my defense. I decided to go to Rwanda right before my defense. It was kind of like a first time I've gone abroad out of the. It was fully paid for through the university because I was going to be a chaperone, and I was doing work for it because it was kind of connected to my dissertation work. And so on the 6th of March, I left. I got back on the 15th. I was in tears on the 14th because I was told, like, oh girl, you can't connect to Wi-Fi in Amsterdam. It's gonna be a problem. You're gonna be somewhere in quarantine. We don't know that you're gonna be able to defend. What are you gonna do? You're gonna have to push your graduation date back. And I was like, I got a job. Like, I have to finish. Like, I was in tears. He's supposed to be living, having the best time of my life, right? And so by the 15th, I got back, and again, day after day after day, something else came down the pipeline about, like, oh, you're in person. No, you're not. Oh, we're going to be in person. 2 committee members don't feel comfortable being in person. So like all these things started changing within a 10-day period. And then I ended up defending, and it was beautiful. So I say that to say, like, while you might be really excited about defending, and yes, virtual defenses have become a norm, some people are still sitting with the fact that, like, this is not what I dreamt of, right? I'm the first in my family to become a PhD. I worked so hard for this for so long, and this is not what I imagined. So I really encourage you to try to make the best of it, to know that you're the expert, you know your stuff. Go in there very confident, but also make sure that you try to make it a memorable occasion for yourself. You can have balloons in the room. I've seen people do toast at the ends of theirs. My friends made a playlist for me at the end. And so they played the music, and my committee danced with me for a little bit while I was in my little tears and my feelings, and just really try to make it a memorable occasion. Don't feel like just because you're sitting down or, you're at your house or wherever you're at on the campus, that you can't make it something. And I have people in the background, like, I'm sitting here looking at you on Zoom. My mom and my grandma were on the couch right behind me. And so they were able to celebrate and be there with me while I was on Zoom. They weren't logged in. They just were looking at me while I was talking on my computer. And so, really just know that it can still be a great experience, and make it be that for yourself.
Totally agree.
Well, let's and we, fortunately today we have a small enough group where we can answer some questions. I see there are quite a number of chats, comments in the chat. Veronica, are there several that can be combined into questions that we can ask, or we can even throw this? I said it's a small enough group. We can, you can raise a hand or just unmute your mic and ask a question. I do believe we have a small enough group where we can do that and have a discussion about questions you all might have for our panelists that they did not cover that you would like some feedback on.
Actually, if Jeffrey could unmute and ask your question about when you're ready to do your presentation.
Yes, I like to do that. I apologize that I brought like a kind of big thing in there. So, you know, when, I mean, at this level, when you are ready to like, you know, present everything. So I was always wondering, I guess just thinking about it makes me a little like nervous, but because being in Zoom, I would think that you feel more confidence because like you're at home and then you feel comfortable. But I heard a lot of stories from other students that they said, well, other people that they were about to present, and they said they have like, you know, like papers attached to the wall. Some others told me stories that they have like, you know, stickers are on the computer. I'm like, how do you do that? Your computer is so small. They said they look like, you know, one of those where you look at phone numbers in the 70s. It was just like so many of those. So I was like, oh my God. So I was just thinking, I'm like, is there any way that you feel that may help, that an accurate way that when you're ready to start, you know, that start is the best, right? When you just go, like when you go to a playground, you just slide, it just goes, right? So is there any way that you have a keyword or something that when you have the slide, you know, and you start, you know, like, okay, I start with this and then I just go, like it flows. Is there any advice you can give us when the time comes?
I think you can do, so one of the things that helped me, as I mentioned, I was a principal, so I, of course, present to staff a lot. And in my current role, I think the slides that you create, when I created my slides, I purposefully would highlight a word or bold a word or underline a word. And it may have seemed as though emphasis was placed on that word, but it was a visual reminder for me to say, don't forget to talk about lats and billings at this point, you know, so that, and the practice, the more you practice, the better you're going to get. And so literally, you know, I had a group of friends and teachers who were so over me because I would literally practice my defense. I would just go through it, because the other thing with Zoom, keep in mind, we are zoomed out, right? And so you want to be cognizant of time. And I will go on and on because you're passionate and you've worked for 4 or 5 years, you know, on this thing. This is like your baby. But so I practice timings to make sure I allocated a specific amount of time to slides to make sure I didn't lose my crowd with all the details. You know, of course, I covered what I needed to cover. But, you know, your committee is interested, but the people viewing could care less. They just want to hear them say Dr. Whoever at the end of the presentation, right? And so, so I may have had a graphic. I may have had just words for me that I knew, okay, when I see this slide, I have to go into my theoretical framework. I think that's the great thing about a Zoom presentation. It's understood that you can, now you don't do death by PowerPoint by no means, right? Because everyone is literate. But now you can have a little bit more information maybe on your slides because you aren't there. You know, one thing I love about presenting face to face, you can read your audience. Unfortunately, virtually, you can't read an audience, right? So you can't see people like, oh yeah, I get it. I'm looking, you know, so it's very hard to see that across the gallery screen. So practice, go over your slides. You know, you can put a little bit more meat in your slides, but don't overkill it with your slides. And I set the tone. So Winnie and I have something in common. We both did research on Black girls. And so to set the tone for my presentation, because it was on Zoom, I showed like it was, I think, 20 some second clip of Malcolm X's speech. It was an excerpt of him saying the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman, the most unprotected, you know, and that caught their attention. Everybody's like, ooh, where are we going? You know, Malcolm X, fist up, Black Lives Matter, and now let's get going. And so it got people interested. It calmed my nerves. And then we went into, you know, the purpose of the study. So I think have your slides with meat, give yourself verbal, you know, visual clues. No one is going to know but you because they're your slides. And it's just like if you play an instrument, if you're playing a solo and you mess up, no one knows. Keep playing. Just keep moving, just keep swimming, right? Because they won't know. And like Dr. McCoy said, you literally are the expert. And you know, with your committee, one person knows methodology, great. One person may know your stats, great. But when it really comes to the content of your work, you are the expert in what you're studying. And so let that give you the confidence. You won't, trust me, you're going to be so prepared. You won't need an index card the first. You're
Okay.
gonna, those 20, 25 minutes to be over. You're like, man, I should have said this. What about this? It's gonna be so much. You're gonna be just fine, Jeffrey. I believe in you. Trust me, you're gonna be just fine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janine.
Jeffrey, Jeffrey, I was gonna say, I had those notes. I didn't even look at them. I made those notes. I had them. I didn't have them like above me, but I had them right beside me. You don't have time to be flipping through that stuff. Like, you know it, you know? The cards, I didn't even look at it. Them papers were it was wasted paper. I recycled them later on. But I would say when it comes to like Janine kind of touched on it a little bit, like the notes. So there's a way to put notes in your PowerPoint and you can see the notes while you're talking. The only thing is, I went to a proposal defense in the spring, and the gentleman ended up sharing his screen and his notes. And none of his committee members told him. So everybody could see his PowerPoint as well as his notes, the whole entire presentation.
Okay.
And I, didn't want to like send him a message and like, make him nervous or anything like that. But I would say practice if you're going to have those notes off to the side on your PowerPoint and you want to share them. I think sometimes if you have like a second screen, it works a little bit easier. Also, Janine talked about reading the room. When you share your screen, a lot of times you can't see the people, on the Zoom. And so sometimes if you have a second screen, you can drag the people over and still see your screen as well as see the people as well. There's ways to set that up, but I wasn't able to do that. So like I couldn't see my audience and I ended up recording my defense, but like the whole entire time I never unshared my screen. So like I couldn't even see like who was there. So like later on I was like, I want to know who's there. So like I went and looked at my Zoom attendance so I could see like who attended. Cause I just was like, I don't even know who was in the room after I joined. Because I never unshared my screen because I was so nervous, that's what I was thinking about. My defense, here's the PowerPoint, that's what you need to look at. So, but I would definitely just say, you will figure it out. You're gonna know your stuff by then. So, if you want a couple of notes, a couple of highlights, that's fine, but you're not even gonna have time to be flipping through those papers.
Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Janine. Awesome.
You're welcome. You're welcome. There was a question from Michael Fleming. And okay, he's on. And he asked us, did you both give your proposals and dissertations online? If so, how was the online dissertation presentation format different? So fortunately, my proposal was done face-to-face. So I didn't have the online issue. I pretty much kind of used the same format as my proposal. It was just more in depth with my actual research now that had been conducted for the defense. And then, like I said, I added a Malcolm X piece. I had some actual visual artifacts that I shared that were a part of my analysis. So, those first 3 chapters are pretty much your proposal. You just kind of touch on them for your defense just to reiterate, give people some background context, and then you really fully talk about the research that you did, the conclusions, implications that derive from it. But I will tell you this, the majority of your time will be spent with questions. Now, I always say if you do a great job, you won't have a lot of questions. And it doesn't matter how great of a job you do, committee members can turn to be, I'm not even going to say it, it's ungodly. I think it's hazing, right? So they just like, you already know, I know the answer to this. We talked about this during practice, and they'll still, may ask you some questions, right? So don't let them trip you up. Like I mentioned earlier, one of my committee members had the audacity to ask me, you didn't situate yourself in your research, and I'm disappointed. You're a Black woman, and you did not talk about being a Black woman in your research on Black girls. Like, that was her tone. Now, in the real world, I would have turned my camera off. and got myself together, but you don't have time to do that, right? It's your defense. And so I just politely told her, well, my research is not just for Black women, it's for all people. And so because I wrote my dissertation, I could have written it in the lens that I chose, and that's what I did. And then, you're kind, right? You schmooze her off, well, I understand what you're saying about situating myself. With work on equity, it's something that all people need to hear. And sometimes those that need to hear it will be turned away if we situate it through the lens of one gender or one race. And then Janice Underwood, she's a SRB alum. She was on my committee, and she's our Chief Diversity Officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia. When she co-signed, hey, drop the mic, Janice, because when Janice speaks, she was like E.F. Hutton when it comes to equity. And so, it was so great to have her support. So after that, that lady just muted herself, and that was the end of her question. So just be mindful too that your committee, you're going to present, but about 15, 20 minutes will be on questions. So, you need to be prepared for those questions because they really want to know that you honestly did the work, and that you really know what you're talking about. Because anybody can memorize some stuff to present, but it's being able to, give applicable answers showing that you did the work. Be prepared for that, you guys, for your defense.
I see another question that says, when you're defending, would you recommend a suit or a suit dress, from Sonetta? I would say, dress. I would say find out what, your committee is looking for. I definitely wouldn't want them judging you based on your clothes and everything, but hopefully you have a good enough relationship by now where you know what's appropriate and what's not. But I will say I was very overwhelmed with everything because it was happening so fast. So I didn't get a chance to get exactly what I wanted to wear. But months later, I was seeing so many people like wearing so many colorful things for their virtual defenses, and it really made me happy. I remember one young woman, I saw her wear like a purple suit, and it was a nice purple suit, but it was purple, and she was like, "This is my favorite color. If I got to defend virtually, I'm going out with a bang." I saw somebody else with like gingham design, with a print design. A lot of people wearing suits with pants because nobody's even seeing your bottoms unless you're standing up. And so I've seen like really nice suits. I've seen dresses where people wear professional dresses. I've seen everything, honestly, when people come to defend, except for like completely dressed down. I haven't seen that. But I would really make sure you wear something that you're comfortable in, because I didn't have on any heels or anything, sitting down in that chair. I was with my socks, my comfy, cozy socks. But I would just make sure that you feel comfortable and confident in the outfit that you pick. So that's what I would say about that.
Agree. And I would just say what Dr. McCoy said, no matter if you're at home, wear bottoms, because you may get so excited and jump up out your seat. And in Zoom, you'll have on pajama pants with a full Chanel suit top on and stand up, right? So just make sure you are fully dressed, because you just never know. So I would just say dress as though you're going to a job interview, because honestly, it is. You never know what may come out of your defense. And I wore a periwinkle suit with like this vivid, my mom had a Louis Vuitton scarf that had all these colors in it. And I just wanted my mom to be with me. So I rocked my mom's LV scarf, and I had on a periwinkle suit. So I was going to bring some light to my December defense. But I was fully dressed though.
And I think that's really good advice about, you just never know. It's a camera, things can fall, you want to, Sonetta, I would also say, just remember, it is a professional setting. Let that be your guide. It is a professional setting.
Thank you.
Let me interrupt just a moment. Gwendolyn Taylor has had her hand up for quite a while, so if she could go ahead and ask her question.
Hello, everybody. It's Dr.
Hello.
Taylor, Christine Taylor from the University of Alabama, and what an awesome workshop this. I just want to offer a couple of things to think about to students, to our graduates. One, if you have the 3-minute thesis on your campus,
I did that. Yeah.
Participate. I've been a judge for that for our campus for a number of years. And I've seen the quality of presentations increase dramatically.
Yeah.
And even if you don't compete, looking at how people lay out their information, how they present, because their goal is to connect with people who may not have a clue about what they're doing. I think that would be an excellent guide to whether it be in person or virtually with your committee. It's a wonderful way of doing that. So the 3-minute thesis, if you get a chance to see it, do it, participate. I encourage that. Secondly, when I got my degree in it was very good. But I was lonely. You know, I was like the only Black woman in my college at the time. And so one of the things that I began to do with my cadre of colleagues, and I have done for other Black women as they come out, and you can expand this as far as you want to, because, you know, somebody said it's like your baby. It is like your baby. And so you present your baby and it's over with, and then it's just you and your baby. So I love the fact that you're celebrating, but I also will call. So if I find out someone's graduating, I'll call my network, and then you'll get all these calls from people around the country saying, for instance, welcome, Dr. G. Christine Taylor. I heard from blah, blah, blah. We welcome you to the community of scholars. People have loved that idea, and I want to offer that to you as a way. You don't have to know them, but you know them because you all been through the same experience of, you know, just imagine if you get all those text messages or phone calls or email messages, and, you know, people always announce who they are. I've done it also with people completing law school, but particularly if we find ourselves in settings where we are historically underrepresented, having that affirmation that, wow, you've done this great thing. And there are a whole lot of people been waiting for you to fill your seat. I have just found joy in doing it, and the people that have had it done have equally done that. So if you're graduating, send me a note and I'll be sure to add you to my list, or start it yourself, because I think just having that way, because it at times can be kind of anticlimactic. Okay, I did this, I got corrections, but it's a way of building that bridge, I think, from the process that you're in into the academy. And that's all I have. And hello and happy New Year, everybody.
Christine, I love the suggestion. And I know some other people who use that same method. And when they're students, they announce it out. And, you know, and it is that network of people, so that these people are getting congratulations from all over.
Yes.
And I think you are right. And I've had scholars talk about the letdown at the end.
Yeah.
It does. It's very real, and it does happen on occasion. And to prevent that, I love the idea of kind of doing that shared network, give congratulations to the newly awarded PhD, and just getting those affirmations from all over. It is neat when you do it. And I've done it for other people too. You know, I don't know them, but one of their colleagues or friends has told me that they completed, and to send them a congratulations. And I do that because I do know what it can mean. And oftentimes it is a letdown. So thank you for sharing that, Chris. That's
absolutely,
very good.
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Very good suggestion.
Dr. A, I see a question in the chat about sending the manuals and presentations to the committee. So I wanted to answer that.
Yes, please.
Erica, I did send, they had my dissertation in advance, because that's a university-wide policy, but I also sent them copies of my presentation so that they could have it just in case. And like I said, we had a committee backup plan that was not mandated by the university at the time. I'm sure they may have something in place now, but they already had that information because they were like, hey, Zoom has been full, like this is new, like let's just make sure we have this just in case. And I think we had picked a backup day as well to defend just in case there was a lot of problems with it. And I see also Catherine has in there, do you have any tips to portray confidence via Zoom presentations? They can tell if you got confidence or not. Right. They can tell. And so they can read, your committee members should know you by then. So, they're able to pick up if you're confident or you're not. I went to a presentation, another defense, and the person read off of a piece of paper the whole entire time. They never lifted their eyes. And I can just tell that they weren't confident because they were just reading. And I mean, and they knew the stuff. I knew this person. I had talked to them about it. They had told me about it for years. But that day, they just felt like they had to hold that paper because they were so scared and worried. And so I would just say, practice, practice, practice on other people that you know, and ask them, do you look confident? You know, practice on Zoom. If you're going to do it on Zoom, practice it on Zoom.
I think one thing too, who was that said that? Catherine, what's going to give you confidence? I think that is one of the greatest benefits of presenting on Zoom. You're going to be in your own comfortable space. So you won't be in a boardroom, a lecture hall, or conference room. You may be like Dr. McCoy at home in your living room around loved ones. So you know you got people looking over you. I was in a classroom in my building. So you're more than likely you will be in a very comfortable space. And a comment Dr. Taylor made about 3MT, I put it in the chat. I was a 3MT winner for my university. Was it 2020, 2019? I can't remember. But when I went to UAB to do the regional competition, first of all, you know, Dr. Abraham is a celebrity. I was so excited to see him. I probably almost knocked him to the ground when I saw him because, you know, we only see him at the Institute. So it was so exciting, you know, to see him. And she's absolutely right because let me tell you, you take a 250-page paper and put it in 3 minutes, right? And you have to put it in layman's terms. So if your abuelita is listening, she knows what you're talking about because that's what 3MT, and it has to be engaging. You have to be confident. And so even if you don't participate, go, but participate because a lot of people of color don't participate. And, you know, when I got to Alabama, we were literally a dime a dozen, the people of color who participated. But you can start your defense with your 3MT. I've done that at some presentations I've been asked to speak at different things, and I'll always start with my 3MT. And when I say you hook people with that speech, and then that gives you the confidence when you see you have them all in, and then you go from there. Because now you know they know a little bit of what you're talking about. So when you get into the meats and potatoes and start speaking through an academic point of view, it doesn't make it as difficult to understand because they got the basics from your opening introduction. So please look into 3MTs, and you win money. I think I won like $1,000. They paid for me to go to UAB. I networked, I met people. So it is an amazing opportunity to do. So I put my email in the chat. I could send you a copy. Our university recorded it. And another thing we learned about 3MT, you can register it with ProQuest. So once you get to that phase, my graduate advisor told us to put it on ProQuest, and we literally added them to our Vitas. So think about that. That's another benefit of the 3MT.
Yeah. It is, and as Dr. Taylor pointed out, it is, I mean, you just think about what that's about and how it really prepares you for the defense. I mean, you know, it is excellent preparation. You know, and even if you don't do well on that, it is still great practice for the defense. It is wonderful practice in talking in front of people, consolidating your information down to, you know, the nuts and bolts, because you got 3 minutes to get that message across, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, excellent suggestion. Excellent suggestion. And Janine, you did do very well at that. I mean,
Thank you.
Yes, I do remember that.
Thank you.
Oh,
I know we're at time, Dr. A. Can I add one more thing really quickly?
Yes.
I just wanted to say, you know, we don't know, you know, what direction we're going in. We're still in a global pandemic. And I just really wanted to say, even with the defense, I said, make it special for yourself. But even when you're thinking about graduation, even though that's further from the defense, please make it a celebration of your own. I opted not to go in person because my graduation ended up being inside in August, you know, a year and a half or so after I defended. And I opted to still do it at home because I had a family member, my mom, who just, you know, couldn't go in person. It just wasn't safe. And so we ended up having a celebration at home. And while I was really upset about not graduating in person in 2020, 2021, I was so excited to be in home graduating, walking down the stairs of my parents' house, playing my graduation music. I walked down to God's Plan and had a good old time with Drake and the rest of my family, and said my hurrahs. My family talked a little bit, and it was great. We even had balloons set up in my house, and so I just wanted to say to everybody, make it whatever you can be, and really take the time to celebrate yourself. Because I know Dr. A said you can really come down and have a down moment, but really try to find a way to uplift yourself and find a community that can actually continue to encourage you to do that as well, as you work for this and you deserve it.
All right. I believe, thank you both very much for your insightful comments. I believe we have reached the witching hour, and we know everybody's busy, and we're all zoomed out, as I think Janine mentioned, excuse me, Dr. Perry mentioned earlier. But Veronica, do any other last words, anything we need to remind our participants about today?
I'll just remind you to please fill out the survey, because we would definitely appreciate your feedback. Know that this is being recorded, and we will make sure that we make that available to you. And thank you so much for your time and for coming. And we look forward to having you join us for the next opportunity.
Yes, thank you all very much. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.